Hi everyone. So I'm back with another video and I know that you have already learned complete denture, but it does not stop on denture delivery, does it? No, right? So let me give you a very quick clinical scenario wherein two patients come to you. Denture patients, two of them with same complaint of discomfort. Now this is a classical case of denture stomatitis. One thing that comes to my mind is my consulting prosthodontist said that one patient just needs a routine hygiene protocol to be followed while another needs antifungal drug. So are the patients of different category? Well, no. Both of them are a classic case of denture stomatitis, but what you missed here is to take a very important thing, and that's your history. So we're going to be learning about this today. As you all know, I'm Dr. Rudy Lalin, prosthodontist and author of Dental Material and Prostho Mind Map book. I'm your mentor for both the subjects, and we are going to dive into the topic of denture stomatitis today. Now, denture stomatitis is known by multiple names. At the same time, you can expect a 5-marker with anything. So your examiner can be tricky and can ask you anything regarding this. But what you need to understand is that may it be called denture stomatitis, denture sore mouth, inflammatory papillary hyperplasia, or chronic atrophic candidiasis, these all have been used to call denture stomatitis, but they cannot be used interchangeably. Why? Because the etiology for each one of them is different. What you're going to see, the clinical signs are going to be different. It is a representation of denture stomatitis, but let me just quickly explain this with the help of an example. So when I talk about chronic atrophic candidiasis, I know that it is the Candidal infection. That's the etiology. On the other hand, stomatitis means it's the inflammatory change caused due to the mechanical factor. And mechanical factor here is nothing but the pressure from your denture. So I want you to understand that it might have multiple names, but your answers need to be according to what is asked. Now, one thing that is very classic when we talk about denture stomatitis particularly is your Newton's classification. Newton's classification is something that has come for NEET multiple number of times, for your vivas. This is one of the favorite question that we love to ask the students. What exactly? It's, when do you see type 3? For that, let's just quickly dive into each type. And what you see here is type 1. So type 1 is nothing but pinpoint. You see classical red sign of inflamed gingiva, now converted into inflamed mucosa. So what you see here is a pinpoint inflammatory change. For type 2, it is slightly more diffuse. So you can expect to see it over a wider area. What you see here, right? This is a wider area. At the same time, this is the most commonest type. Most commonly found is type 2. And type 3 is going to be accompanied with growth, tumor-like mass, right? Papillary hyperplasia. We are also going to learn about this in Kelly's syndrome. But what you need to understand here is that it is constant irritation from your denture that leads to overgrowth of mucosa. And this can also be associated with your fungal growth. At times, giving medication or removing etiology is not enough. And what we need to do here is excise it using your surgical procedures. So this was about your Newton's classification. So the question that your examiner asks is, what is type 3? So you can say that type 3 is a type of denture stomatitis that is commonly associated with chronic atrophic candidiasis. That is a classical sign. And it is found at alveolar ridges and your hard palate. Now, Your fungal infection can coexist with other types as well, and similarly, type 3 can also coexist with your type 1 and type 2. So you can see overgrowth in some areas of the alveolar ridges accompanied with inflamed areas at other places. Now I know one thing for sure. 2 patients that came to me. One said that there was discomfort and there was redness associated. The other, I prescribed antifungal drug. Why so? Because the disposing factors were different. There are certain factors that are local while certain are systemic. Now, when you have to actually know that it was the systemic factor, you actually have to dive deep into the medical history. Often overlooked by the dentist, right? But this plays a very crucial role if you have to see your patient as whole. So when we talk about the local factors, one thing that is very common is denture patients will sleep with their dentures on, the overnight wearing. Now what is it going to do? Friction. And that friction is going to irritate the mucosa, leading to inflammatory changes. Poor fit of dentures. Now I know if it actually is touching only one part of mucosa and not touching another, what's going to happen? It's going to rock, and this rocking is in turn going to do harm to the mucosa, causing inflammatory changes. Xerostomia. Now we have learned about the factors of saliva. Do you remember? Adhesion, cohesion, interfacial surface tension. All of this was so important when we were talking about retention. Now I know that my saliva is absent. There is xerostomia, Sjogren's syndrome. What's going to happen? It's going to again cause friction to your underlying mucosa. Poor oral hygiene. The patient is not maintaining the hygiene. In turn, that led to growth of fungus. And there can be association of colonization of fungal growth. Now that is typically going to appear like curd, white in nature, but it is going to be scrapable. So this is how we are going to differentiate with your other 2 types. That was your leukoplakia and erythroplakia. Now what I want you to understand is that I talked about 2 patients. For one, I just wanted to modify the oral hygiene. When there is no systemic conditions associated, I know that eliminating the etiology means eliminating the outcome. But systemic factors like uncontrolled diabetes, immunosuppression, if the patient has HIV, what's going to happen? It's actually going to promote more growth of fungal. At the same time, deficiencies, malignancies, and certain medications that in turn cause xerostomia are ultimately going to lead to all of these denture stomatitis. So now you understand why there are so many terms that can come under denture stomatitis, but how the factors, the predisposing factors and the etiological factors are different for each one of them. This is why we need to understand and take proper history when the patient enters the clinic. So make sure that you don't wait for the denture delivery and the patient to report back with the problem to understand, oh, I missed this step. This is first thing. History is the first thing, okay? Not the last thing that you need to see at your follow-up appointment. So now what's going to happen is you're going to see 2 features. Let me be very precise. One would be when the patient is wearing the denture, you cannot see the mucosa. The only thing that you'll see is the subjective changes where the patient is going to complain of pain and discomfort. The patient is going to say it pains. I cannot eat. I cannot talk. There are problems associated. I have too much of salivation. What is this? You need to remove the denture. And when you remove the denture, what you're going to observe is redness. Correct? The inflammatory changes. That's going to be at the mucosal level. Now, in severe cases, when there's going to be constant friction, so if there's more amount of problem, there's going to be ulceration that will be found. And poor oral hygiene, immunosuppression, not taking proper care, not removing dentures. So all of this is in turn going to lead to growth and promotion of fungal infection. Now I want to be very clear. There will be patients who will panic on seeing this curd-like substance. They'll say, doctor, you just gave me cancer, right? Now you just cannot shunt the patient away from the clinic. You need to actually tell them, no, it's not malignancy, it's not cancer. What do you have to do? First thing, see the clinical features. What are you going to see? It's going to be a scrapable mask. Along with that, you get all the investigations like blood culture, smear sample, and biopsy done. Biopsy is not required unless you suspect that it's a pre-malignant lesion or a malignant overgrowth that is associated. First, you can just go by doing the smear and culture test. If that is also inconclusive, you can then opt for biopsy. Now, how do you manage this? First thing is that you do all the basic protocols. If there's any deficiency that's associated, if the patient is not maintaining the hygiene, you first instruct them how to use the denture, how to remove the denture, how to clean the denture, how to place the denture. Now, when I say place the denture, what exactly do I mean? Patients do put it in water, right? You have to be very specific. Change the water. They don't understand. It might be something that we laugh upon, right? That they were using the same water. But imagine algae and fungus growing into it. So be very particular when you are actually instructing your patient to do anything. So you educate them for their diet. You actually teach them what is a balanced diet. How are they exactly supposed to shift from liquid to semi-solid to solid food. Then you give them salivary substitutes. There are xylitol substitutes that are available, which are non-sugary in their composition, but at the same time have the potential of initiating the salivation. Along with that, identify the risk factor. If you know that the patient is taking the medication, instruct them to have water, more amount of water. If you know that the patient already does not maintain the hygiene well. Now at times it wouldn't be because you did not educate the patient well. It might be that they have certain medical conditions that are associated. Let's say for example, Parkinson's. What is their dexterity? It does not work. They cannot clean. You give them other options. Give them denture cleaning tablets. Call them for regular follow-up. One regular follow-up can also save a lot of problems. So don't skip your follow-ups as well. At the same time, denture surface irregularities are that one hub that's going to harbor all the microorganisms, all the fungal infection. Please clean the dentures well. You need to polish them well, such that those serrations don't actually lead to, providing that space for the microorganisms to grow. At the same time, now, if there has been major amount of ulceration or inflammation that's associated, please reline. Now, there is something known as soft liners, there is something known as tissue conditioner, and there is something known as hard liners. If this is what confuses you the most, next lecture is just meant to clear all of these doubts. Go quickly watch the next lecture and be very clear. When are you supposed to use what? And then obviously you need to instruct them to clean the dentures, especially remove them at night. No wearing at the time when the salivary stimulation is so low. Correct? The salivary stimulation decreases at night. Why do you want your dentures to be in mouth in that area that does not have saliva? So do that. Now, apart from the local management, you did everything that you could do with your oral cavity. Systemic management is equally important. And what you need to do is antifungal use. There are multiple drugs that are available in market. To name some, there's going to be nystatin suspension, mesonazole gel, fluconazole capsules, clotrimazole gel. All of these are actually available and you can prescribe them being a dentist. And at the same time, now if there is a huge papillary growth that is present, you may do whatever you want. You can discontinue wearing the denture, yet it's not going to subside. The final thing would be surgically excise that mass. Yes, you need to do a surgical correction for that thing. And other thing that you need to understand is that whenever this is going to happen, you need to discontinue wearing of the denture. Not just the surgical part, alright. Even the local management, even when you're giving systemic, ask the patient to discontinue dentures for some amount of days. If you're giving systemic drug, ask them to stop for those number of days. If you're giving local instructions wherein they have to clean the denture, if you see there's even a slightest of ulceration, let the ulcer heal. Give it some amount of time, give a soft liner, give a tissue conditioner, and then ask the patient to start wearing the dentures again. So this was all about your denture stomatitis. I hope you understood it well, and let's just quickly see. The most common clinical presentation of denture stomatitis is painful ulcer. Yes. White keratotic patches? Not really. They are more of scrapable kind of patches. Red inflamed mucosa under denture. Vesicular lesions. So now ulcers and vesicular lesions are present, but the most common thing that will be seen would be red inflamed tissue. It's the frictional keratosis that takes place leading to denture stomatitis. Preventive measures. So we have discussed about all of them. You will broadly classify them into local and systemic. And for local, you have to maintain oral hygiene, make sure that the flow of saliva is good. At the same time, you have to make sure that patient is doing everything. There are no deficiencies that are there. You give them substitutes, you give them medications, you give them multivitamins, and you make sure that all the local and systemic factors are dealt with it. So this was about your denture stomatitis. If you enjoyed learning this and if you want to evaluate yourself, you can actually visit the mind map. You can refer the mind map on the app and solve all the flashcards and MCQs that are present on the app. Also, you can follow the Instagram page, and every day we come up with a new quiz. Be NEET prepared, and I'll see you in the next video. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Ta-da!